All right, there we go. Yeah, it's the real deal. It's the real deal. I was just giving Levi some attention because look, he's back there. He looks so bored, doesn't he? He's just chilling. He's really back there. I know it looks weird, like he's part of the couch, but he's really not. So I just had to, for those of you who haven't met Levi, that's Levi Preston back there. He's the man. Used to be Levi and Gideon. Of course, we lost Gideon, unfortunately, I don't know, it's been about 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago now. So Levi's holding down the house by himself. Of course, last night, I have something to admit. That is, my wife caught me looking at websites, the kind of websites she really doesn't like to catch me looking at. Great Dane websites. Yeah, it's true. It's true. So, yeah, maybe sometime soon we'll get another puppy. You'll see a puppy romping around here. We're just waiting for the right one to come into our lives. If you've ever searched for a dog, you know how that is. You know when the right one comes. So Levi Preston, meanwhile, holding down the fort. We're missing Gideon. Hopefully there will be a replacement here sometime in the next 6 months or so. And that will make me very happy. I'm always very happy, but that will make me even more happy. Oh, by the way, in case you don't know who I am Mark Meckler, and this is the Sunday Night BattleCry, and we are coming to you live from right here in the library. This is the library. This is actually my library, which is kind of one of my favorite places on earth, right? You see the books. There's a lot more than that, by the way. They're over here. They're upstairs. There's a lot of books in here, and I love being surrounded by books. And you see over my shoulder over here, that's one of my saddles. Love that saddle. That was gifted to me by an old cowboy friend of mine, Dell. So you kind of get the feeling for my life a little bit. And then over this shoulder back there, you see there's an old Colt 45 replica because, we like guns around here. Spent the weekend building guns with my son, Jacob. It was my dad's 83rd birthday. So we all hung out, had a great time. So we laughed, we loved, we had a good time, but I was also a little bit sad this week. And the reason I was a little bit sad is because I don't know if you did, but I watched Joe Biden's press conference. President Biden held a press conference. This is the longest time, by the way, that a president's gone in modern history without holding a press conference. And so there are high expectations. And however high your expectations were, even if they're real low, old Joe didn't meet those expectations. Producer G, roll the tape.
So the best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway, we're going to get a lot done. And if we have to, if there's complete lockdown and chaos as a consequence of the filibuster, then we'll have to go beyond what I'm talking about. Okay, hang on. Sorry. Oh, sing me, Miss Kim.
What? What was that? Look, it feels a little weird to make fun of somebody who is going through what he's clearly going through, because what we're watching is the president of the United States slipping away into dementia. And if you've ever experienced this in your family, we've seen it in our family with some of the older folks sliding away like that. The signs are really obvious. I mean, that's just, there's not even a guess there. When you do the things that he's doing in that press conference, when you completely get lost, when you have no idea what you're talking about, you're literally going down a path and just get lost. That's just not normal sort of, oh, something slipped my mind. That's the president of the United States in full-blown dementia. And it's not cool, honestly. It's sad. It's scary. And the mainstream media is covering it up. I mean, this is what's so incredible. If you read the media reports around it, it's like he was cogent. He was amazing. He was on it. He was at the top of his game. He laid out his agenda. He was clear. He was concise. I don't know what they were watching, right? Because I'm pretty sure afterwards they gave Joe a cup of banana pudding and sent him back to the basement. I mean, it was really bad. And that should make us nervous, right? This is the president of the United States. This is the guy that holds the nuclear codes, right? This is the guy that can launch a nuclear war. This is the guy that's supposed to be leading the country, setting the tone, setting the agenda, and he's clearly not in his right mind. And I think we should be very concerned about this. The good news is, I think, at least the system is robust enough to take it. We've had presidents before who become incogent in the White House. Wilson became incogent at the end of his term. FDR became incogent at the end of his term. The press covered for those guys. The difference was the press here is not just covering for him, they're actually a cheerleader for him. And the question is, where's the agenda even come from? Because I can promise you 100% the agenda is not coming from Joe Biden. It's coming from somewhere else. Is it coming from Kamala Harris? My theory is, generally speaking, it's coming from President Obama, not even necessarily directly. But if you look at who Biden is surrounded with, it's Obama acolytes. It's people from the Obama administration are now in control of the Biden administration. And so Kamala Harris, I think she's waiting in the wings. She's watching Joe slide into oblivion. She's going to step in and be president. But it seems to me that the old Obama administration is actually running the Biden administration at this point. And it is bad and it's out of control. And if you want sort of the example number one, the first, the best, the strongest example right now is what's going on the border. What's going on the border is not, excuse me, it's not just a travesty. It's not just a terrible thing. It's about human suffering. If you want to know the two words that most represent what's going on the border right now, it's human trafficking. That's right, human trafficking. In other words, moving people for money, holding people in bondage. Right now, it's estimated that the cartels themselves, illegal drug enterprises, are making over $14 million a day on human trafficking, taking people's life savings, taking people's children, raping women, raping children, killing people. And what's going on out there is human trafficking. And so when we say border crisis, don't just think of an open border. It's bad. It's really bad that the border's open. People are just pouring in. Sex offenders are pouring in. Criminals are pouring in amidst the other people who are just seeking opportunity. But this is just a completely open border, which means we don't have a country. And we, as a country, not you and me, of course, but as a country, are encouraging human trafficking, sex slavery. These are the things now being encouraged by the Biden administration. And they refuse to admit what's going on. They won't even call it a crisis. It's clearly a crisis down at the border. President Trump announced that he's going to go down to the border. He's going to make a show of it. I mean, that's what he's best at. He's a showman. He's going to make a show of it. And Biden still personally refusing to go to the border, saying he doesn't want to make a show of it. He doesn't want, well, you know what he really doesn't want? He doesn't want pictures of him in rooms filled with plexiglass cages or plastic cages with people sleeping under tinfoil blankets, crammed in space to space, not being tested for COVID, being released into the American population. Joe Biden, or I should say his handlers, don't want pictures of him in the midst of that. So Trump's going to go down there and he's going to expose this. He's been invited by ICE. He's been invited by the Border Patrol Union. Right. And so he's going to go down there and he's going to expose all this. It's really bad what's going on down there. You should be paying attention. You should be calling your congressman. You should be calling the Department of Homeland Security and saying enough of this. We got to stop this. They got to close the border. I don't know what they're going to do, because really what they need to go do is they need to go back to Trump era policies. But how can they do that? They can't admit that they were wrong and Trump was right. So what are they going to do? I don't know what they're going to do, but right now it's really bad. It's all about human trafficking, and you need to let your Congress people know, your senators know, you need to let the departments know, you need to let the president know that they need to stand against human trafficking. We as a nation cannot be in the position of creating a magnet for this kind of suffering, this kind of human trafficking. It's really horrible. Speaking of horrible, mask mandates. We still have mask mandates. What are you guys doing with your masks? See, because I have a new position on mask mandates. Screw them. I'm done with them. That's where I'm at with mask mandates. This morning I went to the grocery store. Our main grocery chain here in Texas, the biggest one, is called HEB. And HEB, despite what they said they were going to do when the governor dropped the mask mandates, HEB kept the mask mandates. They have big signs up at the front of HEB that says, you must wear a mask when you enter these premises. I didn't wear a mask when I entered the premises. And I wandered through the grocery store and I did all of my grocery shopping with no mask on. Unbelievable. I was the only person. Literally the only person I saw in a crowded grocery store not wearing a mask. Why? Because it's asinine at this point, because it's stupid, because it's political theater, because the number of people vaccinated, the number of people who have already been exposed and have the antibodies, we're essentially at herd immunity at this point. It's ridiculous. I'm not at risk. And I think, by the way, if you feel like you're at risk, feel free, wear a mask. See, I'm not scared of you. And if you're scared of me, wear a mask and stay away from me. I'm completely fine with that. I'm not offended if you don't want to be in the same aisle with me. I'm not offended if you don't want to be in the same checkout stand with me. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm not offended if you want to wear a mask, if you're paranoid, or maybe you're a person who's genuinely at risk, right? Maybe you've got some kind of underlying conditions, underlying comorbidities. Wear a mask. I'm not wearing a mask anymore. I'm done wearing the mask. Now, if somebody in a store, they own the store, they manage the store, they're an employee in the store, if they come up and they really want me to wear a mask, well, it's their store. And so I'm not going to be a jerk about it. But unless I'm directly asked and pushed, I'm not wearing a mask anymore. And frankly, most of you shouldn't either. If you're relatively young, if you're healthy, if you don't have comorbidities, take off the damn mask. At this point, it's just political theater. You know, it amazes me and frustrates me. People on the left, they want us to wear masks. You know, of course, now they want you to wear a mask, even if you've been vaccinated, even if you've had COVID before. You know what that is? That's just political theater. And what it is leftist political theater. It's not just political theater. It's as if I said all these people on the left are required to wear a MAGA hat or an American flag hat or whatever, right? Because when you put that mask on, that's a leftist piece of political theater. And I'm not doing leftist political theater anymore. I'm done with it. I hope you're done with it too. It's time to be done with it. All right, let's go back to Biden. I have to go back to Biden. We're going to have to do a lot of Biden. It's just because he's the president now. We did a lot of Trump when he was the president. We're going to do a lot of Biden. Now, we're nonpartisan here, right? I mean, so I'm just going to do some Biden. Biden has now apparently compared election integrity efforts to Jim Crow laws. Can you imagine that? So you've got Georgia passing laws that are just for election integrity, right? To make sure that the ballots are secure, to make sure that we know who's voting, to clean up the voter rolls. And he says that's the same as Jim Crow laws. Now, I realize maybe he was alive. Maybe he was responsible for Jim Crow laws. I mean, certainly he gave Senator Byrd accolades when they buried him. And Senator Byrd was obviously the greatest or biggest racist ever to serve in the United States Senate. And so I'm not sure why he thinks these are like Jim Crow laws, or he knows a lot about them because he knew Senator Byrd so well. Let me read to you some of the laws that are being passed right now that Biden seems to think are just like Jim Crow laws. He said, what I'm worried about is how un-American this whole initiative is. It's sick, he said. It's sick. Deciding in some states you can't bring water to people standing in line waiting to vote. Deciding you're going to end voting at 5 o'clock when working people are just getting off work. Deciding there will be no absentee ballots under the most rigid circumstances. And then he said, you're going to love this. The Republican voters I know find this despicable. Republican voters. Do you know any Republican voters who find voting integrity measures despicable? I'm guessing that Joe doesn't know any Republican voters. Now, he wasn't done there. He said, I'm convinced we'll be able to stop this because it's the most pernicious thing. It makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. I don't really know what that means. This is gigantic what they're trying to do. So let's run through a little bit what states are trying to do, because first we got to clean up a few things that he rattled off. There's a debate in Georgia right now about a provision regarding bringing voters food and water while they're waiting to vote. Un-American? Well, not when you consider that those kind of services could amount to illegal electioneering, but maybe Biden just thinks those restrictions are un-American too, right? And then there's a 5 p.m. poll closing time that we talked about, right? He's apparently referring to a plan in Texas, where I live, that would have the polls close the first week of early voting, and I'm not even a fan of early voting, at 5 o'clock. But then they'd be open until 7 p.m. the second week of early voting. The point of that measure is to create a uniform rule across the entire state instead of all the variations seen in the last election. It doesn't seem like Jim Crow to me. Does it seem like it to you? How about no absentee ballots in states? Because that one's completely bogus. States are trying to rein in mail-in voting, the stuff that caused massive problems in the last election. And so what they want is limitations on absentee ballots, like the way absentee ballots used to be, where you actually had to request one and have a reason for one instead of these broad mail-in voting that we had. I mean, it's just outrageous that he's saying these things. So what are some of the other quote unquote un-American things that states are considering? You're not going to believe this stuff because there's nothing that you would find offensive. How about this? In Georgia, one bill requires voters to include a photocopy of an accepted form of identification with their ballot request for an absentee vote. And instead of a signature, right? So you got to send in your ID. And what does that do? It avoids problems with signature matching. Oh my gosh. It's despicable, isn't it? Can you imagine having to send in a copy of your ID? Arizona's bill, which Governor Doug Ducey signed last week, increases the accuracy of state voter rolls by mandating that the Secretary of State compare death records with voter registrations and remove deceased voters. Huh. Evil. It would also add an annual review of state voter registration database to clear out the names of the dead. Now, I just want to be clear, when I say the names of the dead, I don't mean living people who are able to vote, who can legally vote. I mean dead people. He's removing dead people from the voter rolls, and this is something that is just considered sick and pernicious by Joe Biden. In Iowa, Governor Kim Reynolds signed an election reform bill in early March that requires absentee ballots to arrive before the polls close on Election Day. Oh, wow. The absentee ballots have to come in by Election Day? That's outrageous, isn't it? It forbids county auditors from mailing absentee ballot request forms to voters unless a voter asks for one. Whoa, these are just severe restrictions, aren't they? It also obligates auditors and election officials to enforce state election laws and follow guidelines set by the Iowa Secretary of State with a fine up to $10,000 for noncompliance. In other words, if people don't comply with the voting laws, there's actual fines. People can actually get in trouble. These are the things that he thinks are terrible, pernicious, horrible, vicious. You know, of course, the press says it's all horrible and we're depriving people of their voting rights. We're trying to suppress the vote. But the reality is it's Biden and his cronies that are attempting something despicable here. They're attempting through H.R. 1, the Death of Democracy Act, to shove down all these worst practices on all the states. Remember, the Death of Democracy Act, H.R. 1, forced states to implement mandatory voter registration. Everybody must be registered. States must allow all felons to vote. States must extend periods of early voting, shown to have no effect on turnout, by the way. Demand same-day voter registration, which absolutely encourages voter fraud. Limits the ability of states to cooperate to see who's registered in multiple states at the same time. Like, why would you do that? Don't you want to know who's registered in California and Texas at the same time? Bars states from making their own laws about voting by mail. It's supposed to be the state's responsibility. Mandates free mailing of absentee ballots. Effectively bans state-based voter ID laws, which are now in 35 states, and it requires states to allow ballot harvesting. This is what the Democrats are trying to do. And by the way, there's one more that's not covered enough, in my opinion. It is going to cause organizations like ours and your church, by the way, to be required to make their donor list public. What do you think is going to happen with that? Huh? Do you think you as a donor are going to be safe from the woke mob? Of course not. They're going to come after donors with the woke mob. This is the stuff that the Democrats are trying to do with H.R. 1, the Death of Democracy Act. So if people try and make it sound innocuous, oh, we just want the maximum amount of people to vote, we just want it to be easy to vote, that's not true. That is not true. What they're trying to do is destroy our entire system. They're trying to ensconce all the worst practices in law so that they become permanent in federal law, so that you won't have a right to clean things up in your own state. And we can't let them do that. We can't. And so we know one of the last lines of defense is convention of states, right? That's why I work so hard at it. That's why you're out there doing it. That's why you support it. That's why you show up in state legislatures. I saw in Nebraska, in northern Nebraska this week, I saw some photos came my way. Over 200 people showed up at a town hall meeting. Way to go, Nebraska. You guys are awesome. No other organization can do that, by the way. You don't see other organizations get this kind of turnout. That's because you guys are the best. You guys are the top grassroots in the country. Last week, I traveled around. I testified in Kansas. Fantastic. Great crowd came out in Kansas. Not allowed in the hearing room, so they were down in an overflow room. But it was really great. If you didn't get a chance to see the debate, you can see that on our YouTube channel. It was kind of fun. A couple of legislators really went at me hard. I like that. I know it kind of frustrates you guys sometimes. Don't worry about it. You just got to stay calm, cool, and collected and kind of go with the flow. The crazy people, they're going to do what the crazies do, right? They're going to get up there. They're going to say the same stuff. We had somebody from my old hometown whose name I won't say because I don't want to make her any more famous than she already hallucinates that she is. Somebody from my old hometown called in and she was wild-eyed and crazy. People in the committee were just kind of, I think, embarrassed by her presence there. The state was embarrassed by her presence there. But that's what happens. These people call in because of the Zoom hearings now from all over the place. So you get the same crew of like 3, 4, 5 crazy people call into all the hearings from all around the country when they're allowed to Zoom in. I then went on to Wisconsin. This is my second or third trip to Wisconsin this year. It was fantastic to see the Wisconsin team. They came out in force. We had a good hearing there. So what we're going to see those votes after the fact. Wisconsin, Kansas, those are going to pass. West Virginia, we passed voiced vote in the Senate. A voice vote means it's so obvious what the vote is. People don't even have to press the button or raise their hands. They just say aye or nay, and the ayes have it. So we have passed the West Virginia Senate. We're on to the House now, looking good. I think we're going to get a committee hearing shortly there. I'm really excited about West Virginia. I think it's looking like West Virginia is going to be number 16. That's really cool. All right, we're going to close today before we go to Q&A with what I call the final stupidity. We might turn this into a regular feature. This is woke because we got to keep talking about woke because all the woke morons are out there. Oxford, yes, Oxford, the old stuffy English college, one of the oldest colleges in the world, is now considering scrapping sheet music because it's too colonial. Too colonial. That's right. White privilege, right? White slaveholder stuff. Sheet music. They're trying to get rid of also, by the way, music written before 1800. So, like most classical music. So no sheet. Can you imagine no sheet music, no orchestras, no string quartets, no concertos, no symphonies. They are erasing culture. This is beautiful stuff. Some of the pinnacle of human musical talent. And they're trying to get rid of that. What are they going to replace it with? I don't know, hip hop, maybe like the Grammy stuff, WAP, wet. I can't even say the words, right? This is just disgusting stuff. So make sure your kids learn to read music. Make sure your grandkids learn to read music. We're going to have to, you and I, the remnants, we're going to have to preserve the great culture around the world. Because when you ask yourself, can it possibly get any stupider? There's only one answer to that question. Yes. Yes, it can. And it likely will. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to Q&A here, which is my favorite part. You know why Q&A is my favorite part? Because you get to ask the questions. The answers aren't even as good as the questions. You guys just ask such good questions because you are the best grassroots in the world. Let's see what we got going on here in the Q&A. Jimmy Egert says, do you think the plan is to install Kamala as president? My answer is absolutely yes. I think the plan is to install Kamala as president, though I think ideally what they would like to do, being Machiavellian here, is they would like to wait until 2 years and 1 day. Why? Because when somebody comes in and takes over a term after 2 years, it doesn't count as a term for them. So ideally for them, for the Democrats, if they're being Machiavellian about this, they'll wait 2 years and 1 day, remove Joe, put Kamala in. Though the rate at which he's slipping, I don't know, makes it questionable. Wanda Hamilton says, how do we get career politicians out of office? What can we legally do? 2 things, Wanda. We can vote them out. Really hard to do. Occasionally it happens. We should always try and do that. But the second is we can impose term limits through a convention of states. That's what we're trying to do. When 34 states call for a convention, one of the things that we're going to be debating is term limits on federal officials. That includes Congress, but it also includes staffers, bureaucrats, right? These are important, and the judiciary, including the Supreme Court. Let's see. Faith Show says, can Congress ask for a medical review of Biden? Nope. That's a 25th Amendment thing that has to come out of the cabinet. That's not going to happen until they're ready. Bill Nelson says, can you explain what a convention of states is all about? I don't know anything about it. You bet, Bill. Happy to do it. Okay, here's a convention of states in short version. Article 5 of the Constitution contains 2 ways that you can amend the Constitution. First is the way we've always done it. 27 amendments passed this way. When 2/3 of both houses propose an amendment, then that amendment goes out to the states for ratification by 3/4 of the states. The second way, which we've never used, is when 2/3 of the states make the same call for a convention. Then we get to have a convention of states, And if the majority of states want to pass out an amendment as a suggestion, it goes out to the states for ratification by 3/4 of the states. In our case, the Convention of States project is proposing 3 subject matter areas for discussion. Anything that would impose term limits on federal officials, anything that would impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, like a balanced budget amendment, limitations on taxes and spending, things like that, maybe imposing generally accepted accounting principles on the federal government. And then finally, the third thing, anything that would impose scope and jurisdiction limits on the federal government. By that, I mean things where we would say to the federal government, nope, you can't be involved in education. No more Department of Education. No more EPA. No more Department of Energy. Doing away with the things that the federal government aren't supposed to be doing. When a majority of states in convention agree on any amendments, they go out to the states, 3/4 of the states for ratification. That is a convention of states. And that is the only way we'll ever limit the scope, power, and jurisdiction of the federal government. All right. Is there an expiration date on the COS when we have to get this done by? This is from Roberta Rennie. And the answer is nope. They pass it. They can rescind those resolutions anytime they want, but those resolutions stay in place until they're rescinded. Les Draper said, how did Kansas do? Thanks for the visit. Les, we don't have the vote yet, but we will. Excuse me. I'm guessing it'll be on Monday, and I expect a good result. And by the way, Les, thanks for helping with all the photographs and everything you did at the meeting. Really cool. Haven't had a chance to read the book yet, but thanks for the gift of the book as well. Scotty Crick says, how do I help? I live in Idaho. Scotty, we need you for sure in Idaho. Go to conventionofstates.com. Click on the petition, sign the petition. When you're done doing that, go to the Take Action tab, sign up as a volunteer. Really, ideally, sign up as a district captain. That's where we need you the most. Carolyn Famiano says, does New York have an active COS presence? Oh my gosh. Does New York? It's one of the best teams in the nation. I know you think, well, it's a blue state. Is that possible? Absolutely. We've got a great team there. Same thing for you, Carolyn. Go to conventionofstates.com. Click on sign the petition, do that, and then go get involved. You can see that up on the screen now. Then click on the Take Action tab, get involved by becoming a volunteer, specifically become a district captain. John Medici says, how do I get my state to sign up for COS? John, I don't know where you're at, so I can't tell you if your state might already be in. But again, you do the exact same thing. Go to conventionofstates.com, sign the petition, and then click on the Take Action tab and volunteer today. I'm going to close with this. Volunteer today. You got to volunteer today. By the way, you got to have an attitude. You notice this shirt? This is my new Defiant t-shirt. We're going to have these in stock hopefully soon. These are the new COS t-shirts. They say American Sons of Liberty, Defiant. That's us, right? We're going to have these soon. They're not available right yet. This is the early version. What do you think? You guys like this shirt? I love this shirt. All right, because that's our attitude. We are defiant American patriots. Tell me to wear a mask? Nope, I'm going to defy you. Try to take away my Second Amendment rights? Nope, I'm going to defy you. Try to silence my speech? Nope, I'm going to sign up to be the CEO of Parler. I'm going to defy you. That's who we are. That's got to be our attitude. That's always been the attitude of American patriots, right? It was defiance. Defy the king, defy the crown, defy the Axis powers in World War II. We are defiant. This is in our character of Americans. Why do we govern ourselves? Because we've always governed ourselves. And when people try to tell us we're not allowed to, we defy them. That is the defining characteristic of a great American patriot. We defy authority when that authority goes against the Constitution or that authority goes against God. Those are our rules. Those are the fundamental rules that govern our lives, right? The laws of God and nature and our Constitution that protects the rights that we're given by God. I think that's a great place to close. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all you do on behalf of COS. And by the way, if you're in North Carolina, I think I'm going to be out there visiting you all this week. So I'm looking forward to it. God bless you. We'll see you next week.